welcome to the deep dive. So you sent over your notes on Dr. Peter Attia's book, Outlive the Science and Art of Longevity.
Yeah, that's the one.
And we're going to dig into it today, pull out the key stuff on, well, living longer, but maybe more importantly, living better.
Right. Our mission, you could say, is navigating what Attia calls the four horsemen of chronic disease.
Okay.
And really getting clear on lifespan versus health span, just the years versus the good years.
And finding some actual practical things people can do.
Exactly. Actionable strategies. And what hits you right away is how Attia challenges standard medical thinking, especially for these long-term diseases.
He has that analogy, doesn't he, about catching eggs?
Yeah, the falling eggs. He says that's like acute care, reacting to a crisis when the egg is already falling.
Okay.
But his focus is really on, well, how do we stop the eggs from falling in the first place? Which means being proactive about chronic diseases.
Right. And the good news, he argues, is that these big chronic illnesses, you mentioned the four horsemen, heart disease, cancer,
neurodegenerative stuff like Alzheimer's.
and type 2 diabetes, or what he calls metabolic dysfunction. They don't just sort of appear out of nowhere. They build up.
Yeah, it's cumulative. Multiple risk factors, often over decades. And the really powerful thing is that a lot of those factors are things we can actually influence.
Which brings us back to those four horsemen.
Right. He flags these as the main drivers of, well, age-related death in our time. But what's really interesting is he argues they're often linked underneath.
How so?
Well, take something like chronic inflammation. That seems to play a role in pretty much all of them.
I see.
And specifically, he really zeroes in on metabolic health.
So how well your body handles energy, insulin resistance, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And he makes a strong case that improving your metabolic health can actually lower your risk across the board for all four horsemen.
So it's not just about adding years at the end then?
Not at all. That's the lifespan versus health span distinction he keeps coming back to. Lifespan is just the raw number.
How long you live.
Right. But health span is the quality. How many years are you actually healthy, functional, enjoying life? The goal isn't just more years, it's more good years.
That makes sense.
And he uses this great analogy translating Shakespeare. He says, you need the science, right? The accuracy, the data. That's like getting the meaning of the words right. But you also need the art, the nuance, the application to your specific life, your genes, your history, your goals.
So it's personalized.
Very. And his optimistic message right from the start is that we probably already know enough science to, as he puts it, bend the curve of aging significantly.
Okay, so let's explore why he thinks this way. Sounds like his own experiences in medicine were a bit disillusioning at times.
Yeah, he talks quite openly about frustrations during his medical training. There's this specific story about an antibiotic called gentamicin in the ICU.
What happened there?
Well, gentamicin works, but it's tricky. The dose needs to be just right, otherwise it can cause harm.
Right, the therapeutic window.
Yeah, exactly. And Attia felt the standard way of dosing wasn't always ideal. He suggested using, like, real-time data for a more personalized approach.
And that didn't go over well.
Apparently not. He describes facing quite a bit of resistance, sort of a this is how we've always done it attitude. And that really got him thinking about the culture of medicine.
Interesting. And then he actually left surgery for a while, didn't he? Went to McKinsey.
Yeah, kind of a surprising move. He ended up studying credit risk.
Finance seems pretty different from medicine.
It is, but it gave him this whole new perspective on risk itself. In finance, assessing risk analytically, quantifying it, that's everything. You make calculated bets.
Okay.
And he realized medicine often approaches risk more, well, emotionally, less analytically than finance does.
And he links that to the first do no harm principle.
He does. He obviously respects the principle, but he suggests that sometimes that deep-seated caution can actually prevent us from taking necessary actions or adopting newer, maybe better approaches, especially proactive ones.
Because we're too afraid of the potential downside.
Perhaps, or just stuck in established ways. His time thinking about financial risk gave him a framework for weighing risk and reward more objectively, which he then brought back to medicine.
So this all feeds into his idea of different versions of medicine. Medicine 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Let's start with 1.0.
Right. Medicine 1.0, he says, is basically driven by observation and anecdote. Think early pioneers.
Like who?
Like Semmelweis noticing hand washing cut childbed fever rates dramatically, or Lister using antiseptics in surgery because he observed germs caused infections.
Groundbreaking stuff.
Totally. But based on observation, and often met with huge resistance initially, Semmelweis, sadly, was pretty much ridiculed for his ideas.
Wow. Okay, then medicine 2.0, that sounds more familiar.
Yeah, Medicine 2.0 is the age of evidence-based medicine. Randomized controlled trials, statistical significance.
The gold standard we often hear.
And it's been incredibly powerful. Think penicillin, vaccines for polio.
Yeah.
It transformed health. Huge successes.
But Attia sees limitations.
He does, particularly when it comes to aging, which is complex and happens over decades, and also how much individuals vary. Medicine 2.0 often looks at average results.
And he uses that analogy, the bricks.
Ah, yeah, the taping bricks to gas pedals.
What's that about?
It sort of illustrates how some Medicine 2.0 interventions can be a bit blunt, maybe not personalized, like trying to make a car go faster by just taping a brick to the accelerator without really understanding the engine or fine-tuning it.
Just intervening late, maybe treating symptoms rather than the root cause over time?
Something like that. It's often reactive.
Which leads us to his ideal, Medicine 3.0.
Exactly. Medicine 3.0 is all about being proactive, personalized, and preventative.
So less reacting to rain, more understanding the weather patterns.
That's a great way to put it. Understanding the underlying meteorology of disease for each person, using their genetics, their lifestyle, their data, their goals, not just the average from a trial.
So intervening much earlier based on individual risk.
Precisely. Preventing the fire, not just putting it out.
Okay, this proactive idea connects directly to longevity. But he talks about a potential downside of just extending life, this thing called the marginal decade.
Yeah, the marginal decade. It's a pretty sobering concept. It describes what often happens now. We extend lifespan, maybe with late-life medical interventions, but we don't necessarily extend health span proportionally. So you end up with this period at the end, maybe the last 10 years, maybe more, where you're alive, but frail, limited, maybe in pain, low quality of life.
Just kind of existing, not really living fully.
Right. We push the end date out, but the quality of those extra years isn't great. It really makes you stop and think about what you actually want from longevity.
So the goal isn't just a longer line on the graph, but a better experience within that line, compressing the period of decline.
Exactly. Compressing morbidity, maximizing health span. And he really pushes the reader, asks you directly, what do you want to be capable of in your 70s, 80s, 90s?
Like physically? Mentally?
Both. Do you want to lift your grandkids? Travel? Hike? Keep working on projects you love? Have sharp cognitive function? You have to define what a good late life looks like for you.
And that vision then motivates the actions you take now.
Absolutely. The idea is to make your biological age much younger than your chronological age for as long as possible.
So what are the main things that cause decline? He calls them vectors of deterioration, right?
Yeah, basically two main tracks, cognitive decline and physical decline.
Thinking and moving.
Pretty much. Physical decline covers a lot, frailty, losing muscle mass, bone density going down, less stamina, problems with balance and stability.
Things that lead to falls and loss of independence.
Exactly. And cognitive decline is, memory issues, slower processing, leading towards conditions like dementia. The goal is to slow down both of these vectors as much as we can.
How do we do that? This is where his longevity toolkit comes in.
Right. And interestingly, while he does discuss specific molecules or drugs later, the core tools he emphasizes first are lifestyle-based.
Okay. Like what?
Number one, and he calls it the most potent longevity drug we have, is exercise.
Just exercise in general.
No, he's quite specific. He breaks it down into 4 key areas you need to train.
4 pillars of fitness for longevity.
You could say that. First is strength resisting that age-related muscle loss, sarcopenia.
Okay, lifting weights, resistance training.
Yep. Second is stability, things like balance, core strength, flexibility, injury prevention. Really important to avoid falls.
Makes sense.
But third is aerobic efficiency. This is often called zone 2 training.
Right, that lower intensity, longer duration cardio where you can still talk.
Exactly. Building your aerobic base, improving mitochondrial function, it's foundational.
And the fourth?
Peak aerobic capacity, or VO2 max. That's your maximum ability to use oxygen during intense exercise. It's a really strong predictor of longevity.
So you need the foundation and the peak. Strength, stability, endurance, and peak power.
That's the idea, a comprehensive approach to exercise.
Okay, that's a big one. What's the next major tool in the kit? Nutrition.
Nutrition, yes. But again, he steers away from dogmatic diet wars, keto versus vegan or whatever.
So what does he focus on?
He emphasizes understanding nutritional biochemistry, what's actually happening in your body. He says the first thing to get right is calorie quantity, just energy balance.
How much you eat overall.
Right. But then, crucially, he really highlights protein intake, especially as we get older, to fight muscle loss.
So quantity matters, but protein quality and amount are key.
Definitely. He also points out how tricky it is to study nutrition for longevity in humans. Animal studies don't always translate perfectly.
Mice aren't tiny humans.
Right. And those big epidemiological studies looking at large populations can be useful, but sometimes miss nuances or rely on correlations that might be misleading. He tells that funny story about the Denny's breakfast special.
Oh, yeah.
Just illustrating how looking at what people eat without deeper context can lead you down the wrong path. It's complex.
You also mentioned emotional health earlier. Where does that fit?
Yeah, he doesn't frame it as a formal toolkit item in the same way right at the start, but he definitely plants the seed.
How so?
By constantly tying everything back to the goal of living better for longer, what's the point of extra years if you're miserable or stressed out?
True. So physical health and emotional well-being are intertwined.
Absolutely. He gets into it much more later, but the foundation is laid early. Quality of life is paramount.
Okay, one last piece for this initial dive.
Right.
Genetics.
Yeah.
How much does our DNA dictate our longevity?
Well, he explains that natural selection hasn't really optimized our genes for post-reproductive life. Genes that cause problems late in life, like maybe some related to Alzheimer's, didn't necessarily get selected against because they don't usually affect whether someone has kids.
So evolution didn't have a strong reason to weed them out.
Basically. And when you look at centenarians, people living past 100, they're actually quite genetically diverse. It suggests there isn't just one single longevity gene pathway.
Many routes to the top of the mountain.
Kind of. He does mention a couple of well-studied genes like APOE, which affects cholesterol, glucose, and Alzheimer's risk. And another one called FOXO3, which seems involved in cellular maintenance and stress resistance. But it's complex.
So genes play a role, but they aren't the whole story. Not by a long shot.
Exactly. It's more about how your lifestyle interacts with your genetic predispositions.
Okay, so wrapping up this first part of the deep dive, we've really set the stage for Attia's approach, moving beyond just treating disease reactively.
Definitely. We've seen the shift from medicine 1.0 and 2.0 towards this proactive, personalized medicine 3.0.
Understanding risk analytically, not just emotionally.
Right. And really focusing on avoiding that marginal decade by boosting health span, not just lifespan.
Using the key tools, especially exercise with all four components and a smart approach to nutrition, focusing on biochemistry and protein.
Yep. And acknowledging the role of genetics, but emphasizing our agency, the power of our choices.
So the big takeaway seems to be this shift towards prevention, personalization, medicine 3.0.
I think so. It's about taking control, using the science we have to target those four horsemen through lifestyle, aiming for a longer and better life. It's less about just dodging death and more about actively building vitality.
A really empowering message, actually. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Which egg feels most important for you to prevent from falling right now?
Yeah, is it maybe focusing on your metabolic health as a way to tackle risk across all the horsemen?
Or maybe just starting to visualize what you want your health span to look like decades from now. What does thriving mean to you then?
And what's one small thing, just one step you could maybe take today or this week to move towards that?
Because really, this whole conversation about your health, your longevity, it's just the beginning of your own deep dive.
Thank you for joining us at Wisdom House, where we bring you timeless insights from the greatest books. If you found this deep dive valuable, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom House. Stay curious, stay inspired, and we'll see you in the next video.